All right, what's up, Flip Hackers? We've got the man on today. He needs no introduction, Casey Ryan. But if you're new to wholesaling, you're checking out this video, before you smash the like button and hit subscribe, we want you to know what's going on. So Casey Ryan is a baller. He's in Vegas, and Casey, let me give you the opportunity to kind of introduce yourself, tell everybody about your business model and where you're at.
Sure. So, yeah, born and raised in Vegas. My first deal I ever did was 2013. I went full time once I graduated college in 2015, and just little by little scaled our way up from there. I did have a good leg up when I started. So our first year with my partner, when I went full time in 2015, we did like 75 deals or so, which is uncommon, but we had a really solid investor, and that was all flips. And then year over year just grew, incrementally. And now I think 2021, so last year, we finished off at like right under 250 deals, and single family deals, and then some apartment complex, some development deals and stuff. So just trying to learn it all and keep growing every single year.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So similar story to myself, in that we've been doing this, for a minute, and you covered a lot really, really fast. So how many years did you say you've been
full time? Full time since 2015. So that's up 6 years or so, 7 years.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. And you said right away you did, like, your first year you were with a partner, and you guys did, I think, 75 deals right around there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So how were you getting those deals? You said you got hooked up with a buyer?
With an investor. So my partner was already flipping some houses every year, and then he found an investor that had a huge line of credit that was already had done some flipping, or had flippers that worked for him that he would just basically partner on, and they'd split profits. But he went from having a couple $1,000,000 to having access to, I think initially it was like 8 or 10 million. So that's when I jumped. I was taking interviews at the time because I just graduated for engineering, but I knew I wanted to have my own business someday, but I didn't know what I was doing. So I at least was interviewing for jobs at first. And then I burned the boats there and jumped on board with my partner. And so then our first year we did 75 homes, and they're all flips. And
gotcha, okay. So
yeah,
you guys got this investor, you used his capital, and then you guys basically flipped 75 houses.
Yep, we did everything from find the deal to list them on the back end, order every, light fixture, faucet, door handle, every little last item, deliver them to the property. I was delivering tile, doing the bids, listing the properties on the back end, then all the repairs, everything that goes into a flip, which those of you who have wholesaled, flipping and wholesaling are not the same business at all. And it was it's flipping 75 homes is way more work than wholesaling 75 homes. But we were getting all those from agents. I just kind of jumped in and started trying to buy from the auction a little bit. We didn't really buy too many from the auction at that time. It was already sort of dried up. We got a few here and there. And then on the MLS and from wholesalers, and then just no marketing spend, just like a MailChimp account and sending out emails to agents and stuff, trying to get them to send us stuff. So
you're okay. That's amazing. So, and you're right. I mean, wholesaling and flipping houses, like, yeah, you're adding a whole nother element. You still got to find the deal.
Yeah, but true. The hard part of finding the deal, though, on the front end of that because I've wholesaled a lot now too, and at that time for the first 3 years we did no direct to homeowner marketing. Yeah. Now I see the other side, and it's a whole different grind. But I'll say that flipping, I mean, as somebody who has a wholesale operation, I'm sure you've flipped and wholesaled, and you've told me in the past, you're like, we're done flipping. It's just a drain, for the time that you spend into it. Like, it's just way more effort, and honestly, a lot less minimal gain at the end of the day, unless you're doing it at scale. But yeah, so we just we're doing everything from A to Z, and what was your other question? I lost my train of thought.
No, yeah, I was just, I mean, that's exciting, right? A lot of people are like probably tuning in, and they're like, how, seeing where you're at right now and how you got started, and like, you just hit the gates running. I mean, that honestly is probably overwhelming to a lot of people out there that like hear that and they're like, man, I mean, that's like, that worked for him, but how's that gonna work for me? But I think if we dissect a couple of those pieces, like, so for one, you kind of talked about the differences wholesaling and flipping, right? So with fix and flipping, you can add value. So it's a little bit of a different acquisitions model. Wholesale, you got to like really get a good rip so you can sell it to somebody like, you know, you guys that year.
Yep.
And but then you guys don't have to get quite as good of a rip because you're adding that value out. Obviously, if you can combine the two. But yeah, for the fix and flip, for the wholesaler, it's like find a great deal, try to sell it quick, and like get paid. And for the fix and flipper, it's like get a deal, and then I mean that's just the very beginning of this whole process.
Yeah. So, well, I'll flash back a little bit because you're right. That's like, that seems kind of overwhelming, and it absolutely was overwhelming. And it took, 100-hour work weeks for a long time in the beginning to do that. It wasn't just like I woke up one day and just started, oh, here's all these deals. It's like I remember when I first started, I remember going 3 months when I went full time in 2015. I remember going 3 months in the beginning, and it was actually 8 months before where I had, because with flipping, your turn time from the minute that you put an effort to you get money in your bank account is way longer because you have all the renovation, the marketing time, and then through the close of escrow, whatever, and then everything has to get balanced out, and then you get paid. That could take 2 weeks to 6 weeks to balance everything out for insurance,
especially if you're paying
whatever.
investors and got partners, and yeah, you got insurance,
Exactly. It's
refunds and cancellations,
balanced perfectly. So, but so at the 8-month mark, I remember I had paid out way more than I had made. I had made like, for the first 6 months, I made like $800, but I was filling my pipeline so full.
Yeah.
But I remember for the first 3 months trying to find deals, and I mean, I had a little bit of, I had direction, and I had, my partner gave me a lot of insight and was a mentor to me for a long time to open that door. And then I just, worked a ton and figured it out better. But I remember when I got, like, for the first 2-3 months when I wasn't getting, 5 a month or 10 a month.
Hey, if you're getting something out of this video and you haven't done so already, go to the link. I'm gonna drop it in the description of this video and check out the Wholesale Accelerator. Now, if you use this link, it's actually gonna give you 99% off the price, and you can get it for $37 right now. So check that out. It'll give you everything you need to be a $100,000 per month wholesaler, broken down into a 5-day course. It's amazing. Check it out, and let's get back to the video.
That I got one, and then you get that one deal and you're so excited, and then the next Monday sets in and you're like, you feel like you're never going to be able to find it again, especially when you have that drought before. But that's not where my first taste in real estate was in 2015. That's when I started, or that's when I went full time. The first deal I ever did was in 2013. And the way that I had done that was that same partner, he's my brother-in-law. He was flipping, and I had just was like, we were friends. So he's like, he saw how I was hustling. I was buying and selling cars on Craigslist like a maniac. And so he's like, hey, you should come, check out what I'm doing. I'm like, sure, I'll come to work with you today and just kind of hang out. I'd watch what paperwork he's doing. So I spent, like, that was during the summers of college. And I spent, a summer once and then a portion of the next summer just totally working for free. I was like, I'll try to find deals. And I think they gave me a couple $100 on the first deal that I found in 2013. And then I would just do all the paperwork. And so I just learned the transactional, the admin side of what needed to go on, and then learn the MLS. I just learned it all for free. Like, I wasn't paid for it. Learned it, and then kind of knew it, and just obsessed with it for a long time. From like the early 2015, I was dabbling in it. Then early 2015 is like when I started to obsess with it. Then I went full time, and then all that education came into play. But it's still, even knowing all the things I knew over that time studying, let's say, or learning, it still took months to find a deal. And then once you got one, it was like, I just realized it was like, this one thing isn't going to get me 10 deals a month. Well, eventually it did for the MLS, but it was like, this one thing's going to get me 1 to 2, one a week. And then wholesalers, I just got to do the same exact thing every single day, over and over and over again. And those efforts will compound. And I also knew that the effort I was putting in that day may not come back for 3 weeks, 3 months, whatever, because you put all this effort, reaching out to people. It's like you begin to like build a relationship in the community, and then they little by little would bring it back. Or that deal you offered on 3 months later, they come back. It's just filling that pipeline. And I just took so much action in the beginning that we're able to take off pretty quickly after that point.
That's huge. Yeah. Building that network. And that's super inspiring. Right. And if anybody's out there and they're hearing this and they are overwhelming, I mean, there's the nugget right there, right? It's like, yeah, you hit the ground running like 1,000,000 miles an hour when you went full time, but really you had gotten into the business a couple of years before that, and you were willing to go to work for free to learn. And like, actually you were committed. I think that's like the number one thing, is just that you were committed. I was similar when cause I actually it was funny. You said you were flipping cars on Craigslist. I sold cars between college and real estate as well for about 3.5 years. And, it was the same thing. Like during that time, I was like going to real estate seminars on the weekends and RIAs, and like just nerding out on Zillow and all this stuff. And when I finally immediately went full time, I did a similar thing, connected with a partner, immediately started taking classes to get my real estate license. Cause at the time the deals we were getting were like short sales. So, you know, that was our deal source, which allowed us to have a big, you know, good first year. But it was like, you know, being committed and actually, like you said, just like nerding out on it, figuring out how this stuff, being obsessed, that I think really allowed, you know, like you in that year, 75, I mean, you probably made, you know, a bunch of money that year. You started to get into that. And actually, let's go back to that. So we're talking about flipping, and that's a key thing, right? A lot of flippers, rich on paper, super poor, like it's time to go out to eat, and like they don't got any cash. So go back to that real quick and explain, break that down for everybody.
For which part, the flipping portion of it, you're saying?
Yeah, because you were saying you had a lot of deals going on, right? But you weren't actually like making a ton of money.
Oh yeah. So when we started, it was just me and my partner at first, and you know, we had our office, which we split the rent with our same split on what we were doing in the business for profit. He was taking the lion's share because it was his business before I came into it. And honestly, aside from all that, I didn't even really care what I was making, because I was just I was eager to learn. I loved who I was working with, and it wasn't even about the money. I knew it'd come one day, an hour later, whatever. But and then so we had our office expenses. You know, you have our expenses weren't that crazy, you know, because we didn't have a huge marketing budget. We didn't have any staff at the time. But finding that investor to partner with was key, because I got, you know, a lot of people don't flip, even people who do flip, that don't go as hard as we do. We do everything like 150%, but like they'll maybe flip 75 houses in their lifetime. So I got like a decade's worth or more of experience in a year. And I pretty much was making anywhere from 5 to 7% on the net profit of all those deals. If there's a loss, I wrote a check. So I wasn't making a ton of money. That slowly changed, you know, over time, but it really, I mean, it's never about year one or year two. It's like you got to look 5 or 10 years down the road, because you'll have, who knows what's going to happen, but the knowledge and experience you're gaining, it's like by year 5, you may make more than you made which has been the case for me, is like year 4 and 5 in real estate is like, I made more than I had ever made in my whole life combined. And then it just snowballs and it's exponential. And then it's like, who cares if I would have worked for free those first few years? It's like, you learn so much, you know, and that wasn't my intent going into it, but you know, our partnership split, we just had different visions for the future, and you know how that goes. It's, you know, so it wasn't about the money, but ultimately, you know, the knowledge that I was able to learn there set me up for the rest of my life.
Right. And that's the key ingredient. I think anybody that's out there, especially if you're younger, you're just getting out of college, or you're transitioning to real estate or whatever, like if you're getting into it, like just to make quick money, just for that, you're probably screwed. Cause I mean, you might do a deal or two, and then you're going to be in the mindset that you were actually describing, Casey, where you're like, you feel like you almost got lucky, and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to replicate that again, versus going into it being like, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to be obsessed with this. I'm going to figure out how it works. You guys went in and ninja'd yourself an investor with millions of dollars so that you could create deal flow. My story was a little bit different. But similar. I hooked up with a loan mod company. This was in 2008. And so the loan mod company couldn't get any loan mods done, and they were taking these upfront fees from people. And so they didn't want to refund the money to the people. So they'd give them this option. They'd be like, well, hey, we can set you up with a realtor that can do a short sale for your house. And that's how I got going. And then that basically led to like, hey, you can get phenomenal deals on these properties from the banks. That led to wholesaling, which I didn't even really know that's what it was. And I mean, I was doing short sales even before like deed restrictions and a lot of that stuff, arm's length, came out. So that's how
now you can't do an assignment on a short sale.
Yeah, it got so much tougher. I mean, for sure. Yeah. Like in the early days, it was really easy. You could pretty much do anything you wanted. But that was like 2008, early 2009. By the time you got into like 2010, especially 2011 for sure, then 12, 13, it was like every deal was coming with an arm's length affidavit before. Now, like there's the validity of those and it's a whole thing, but like Yeah, in the beginning it was fun. In the end, it got super hard, deed restrictions and all that kind of stuff. But even then, like there was ways to do it. But the key, going back to it, was the commitment, and then going and finding something, whether that's, whatever that's going to be. But it's about learning really, like, more. And I was the same way. I had a partner, so there was like a split. He had already been in the business. I hadn't been in the business. And the only reason our partnership actually ended up dissolving was his marriage at the time took him to another state. And we tried to keep it together, and we started doing deals in both markets. And I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 months in, it was just like, why don't you just do your stuff up there and I'll do my stuff down here. We continue to brainstorm. To this day, we do, and he's a great friend. He's actually in the commercial real estate, does a lot of multifamily stuff. But anyway,
awesome.
The point being, dude, that's awesome, like, that you were committed, and that's where you're going now. So fast forward, now you're still doing the same thing, mostly fix and flips, or like what does your business today look like in terms of like dispositions?
Yeah. So today, I mean, it bounces back and forth. I mean, as I watch the inventory and the market shift, it's just kind of, it's too hard for me to walk away from these flips, because I'll if I'm going to just wholesale them off, a lot of the times I'll look at the deal when I'm selling it, as a wholesale deal. And then I'll see on the back end, they just sell for 40 grand more. And like, when I was at the time I was making the decision, I'm like, all right, well, I'll walk away from 12 grand and make 20 now, or whatever, 23. And I think that the deal's worth this, it's going to need this, and blah, blah, blah. This is what it'll get. This was actually in 2019 that this continuously was happening. And then they would just sell for way more. And I'm like, now I had the capital in place, and I was like, my cash was just sitting on the sidelines. It was almost foolish to just let it sit there, in a sense. So I started going back to flipping in 2020, like 80% flipping, versus the previous years, like 70% wholesale, 30% flipping. And then this last year, I maybe wholesaled 20 houses, and then flipped a little over 100 of them, and then I bought 100 rentals too. So that's where the 250-ish or 230, 50 deals came from. So a lot of flipping. We're predominantly flipping. It's when I see something that's a really heavy rehab, or if I get carried away and buy an apartment complex and a bunch of houses and stuff, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to pass on this flip till I get my cash flow back up, because I don't really work with any other investors right now. So
that's awesome, man. Yeah, so I love it. So building passive income, not just going deal to deal, and you're building a business and also building a balance sheet at the same time. Now, the rentals, are those nationwide, or are those central to Nevada? Where are you buying those?
So I bought 10, or I have like 10 in Vegas, and then probably about another 85 or so in Oklahoma City, and then the apartment complex. And yes, the cash flow was, of course, the attractive part of it, but really it was all that money after I refi and everything, and I have so little cash left into these things. It's like my tax bill was more than that. So now I have all these properties that accelerate all the depreciation on it. So I make money in my flipping and my wholesaling and other stuff that we do, and all that gets wiped out by my rentals.
Yeah. So and to break that down just really fast, what Casey's saying is he made a shit ton of money in his business. And so he went out and bought a bunch of real estate. And the government says that, hey, when you buy real estate, right, that the building's going to depreciate over 30 years. Like, the building's going to deteriorate over time, and it's not going to be worth what it is. So what he's doing is he's saying, instead of taking this depreciation over the next 20 and a half years or whatever it is, he's accelerating it, taking it up front. Is that correct, Casey?
Yeah, it's just like when you buy a car that's over 6,000 pounds and you write it all off in the first year. It's kind of the same concept, but you're only writing off a portion of it in the first year. But yeah, so you could.
So now in the future, you've already taken that depreciation, so you can't take it again. But my guess is you probably don't.
A portion of it.
Okay, but
yeah,
you can take a portion of it again.
Well, here's the way it works. So if you have a house that's 200,000
towards the rest that you're allowed to take.
Yeah. So like if you have a house that's 200,000, you take off the land. So let's say 25%. So you have $175,000 that you can depreciate. When you accelerate it, you'll probably get about 20 to 25% of that 175 in year one. And then the remaining 75% is depreciated over the 26 and a half years. So you still do have little chunks over the next year that will build as you build more properties.
You're taking most, right. But it's a strategy, because right now a lot of people will go, oh shit, I've got a big tax bill in the fourth quarter, and they'll go out and buy. A lot of things to factor in there a lot of times. But when you're in a business where you can acquire stuff, it makes all the sense in the world, especially when interest rates are where they're at right now. The cost of money is so cheap. So that's awesome. So yeah, cash flow. And the other thing I love about like, that's been huge to me that I didn't realize when I started building my rental portfolio, the goal, like originally it seems funny now because $10,000 a month is great money. Don't get me wrong, but not super life-changing if you've been in this business for a while. Right. But that was like my original goal. If I could make $10,000 a month on rentals, like I'm set, I can do whatever I want. Like that was the original thing. And cash flow is amazing. Like it's still the primary thing for sure. But what's cool is you get cards in your hand when you start buying properties. Now, all of a sudden you can do things like you talked about, tax advantages. You can refinance a property and take money cash free. You can 1031 and basically snowball your portfolio. And there's just so many cool things.
And you get appreciation on all these too. The bigger your portfolio is, the more appreciation you're getting, or depreciation, but it's like the market takes a hit. But I don't care if it goes down in 5 years. I'm holding these till they're, for the next 30 years. I'll just continue building and refining them out. But as long as your debt coverage is good, then you're in good shape.
100%. So going backwards for just a second, we're talking about this year, got a lot of flips going on, and we're talking about the delta between, you started to talk about the delta between wholesale and flips. And you flipped a lot more houses than me. And in your career, it's just been a lot more geared towards that. I've always been more geared towards wholesale. But yeah, like you said, I've done a lot of flips. I saw the same thing. I mean, and people out, listening, like, yeah, I mean, I'm doing flips right now. In 2000, so it's 2022 now. So in 2020, at the end of the year, we looked at our wholesale deals and we saw that there was a lot of deals where, and we couldn't factor exactly what the investor made, like the flipper after us, right? Because what their holding costs were, they're using cash, hard money, they have a line of credit, like, are they hammering nails themselves? Like, what are their costs, right? What's their labor? There's all these.
That doesn't really matter. It matters what you think you would have spent ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the main thing, right? But even if you guesstimate kind of like what their costs were, you can look at what they bought, sold it for, and what they did that. And then to your point, kind of figure out what you think they spent, or more importantly, what you would spend on doing that and how much that would leave over. And basically, like, what we saw is like a ton of our deals actually surprisingly hadn't even been resold. Of the ones that had been resold, a lot of them were, they took a deal that we wouldn't have took. We wouldn't have done the work they did, whether they were wholesaling it or they were actually up, fixing, flipping it, updating it, whatever. But there was like 8 or 10 deals. I can't remember exactly, for like 280 grand. And these were deals. These weren't fix and flips, right? I took those out. There was actually a lot more money there if you start looking at those, especially if you just go, oh, just the fix and flips where they were like newer houses and all they really had to do was like paint, some flooring, fixtures, maybe cabinets and counters, and that's about it. But we just looked at there was these 8 or 10 deals were houses where fix and flippers just closed on our wholesale deal, turned around and put it on MLS.
Yep.
And it was 280 grand after accounting for all those costs, right? So it probably could have been closer to 400, depending on what the costs were on those deals. So this year, or actually last year now, in 2021, we said, hey, still don't want to do fix and flips, but anything that makes sense to wholesale, we're wholesaling it. Yeah. Right. And we made an extra, it was about 700 grand in 2021 doing that. Now, again, not a fix and flipper, right? But have a few tools in the belt. I've been a licensed broker for a long time, have that going and stuff. So just by identifying, and to your point, saying, holy shit, I'm passing this off. There's really not much else to do here. And so
especially with the funds buying right now, all the hedge funds that are buying like that, I did that with a bunch of them. I just closed on them, sold them right to the fund. It was, and you make, it's insane. You make way more than you would have flipping because you're comfortable. If you only ever wholesale, even if you have a bunch of cash, you're going to be scared to jump into that boat. So you should flip some every once in a while. I think that makes you a better wholesaler too. But being that I was so comfortable with it, I'm like, I'll just close on this. And if I have to flip it or wholesale it, whatever, then I just sold it to the fund and they bought it at full retail value, without us having to touch it at all. When we thought to get that number before, we're like, we're going to have to put 30 grand into it.
So I love what you said. You said you should flip a house at least once in a while or do one if you're newer. Like, it's going to make you a better wholesaler. I could not agree more. Like, that is huge. If you understand the way your buyers are thinking, that's going to help you. And if you're newer too, like as a wholesaler, I would say, I think you might agree with this based on what you were saying, Casey. Like, if you're going to wholesale a few deals to do quick deals, like that's great, but really start networking with your buyers and finding out who's who, especially in your market, and like identify who's kind of living the lifestyle you want to live. And maybe it's fixing, flipping houses. Maybe it's doing, you know, land segs. Maybe it's like developing, building. There's so many different things. Maybe you want to just keep wholesaling, but you know, and that's kind of similar, kind of a route I've gone where like it's been predominantly wholesaling, but still understanding and doing the other things once in a while. I mean, we just did a full rehab, and we don't do very many full rehabs. We did like a few light remodels this year in the last like 6 months, but we just did a rental property because for essentially the same reasons. We just looked at it. We own it, right? We've owned it for like 3 years. So we're like carrying costs to remodel it and max out that delta weren't that big of a deal. What's funny is actually I tried to wholesale it first, right? So kick the tenant out, put it on the market at $350, got an offer for $345. Said, hell no, I want my $350. I don't care if this thing sits on the months. This was back in like June. Ended up getting the next offer was like $335. I was like, no, got to get up to $350. They wouldn't do it. Tons of offers in like the low threes. I was like, I know I can sell it for that. No. Submitted it to Open Door. Open Door was going to pay me $335 for it. By this point, I was like, I'll take it, because it was actually that price with the fees and stuff. It was almost the same as selling it for that on the market, but then I was getting the 1% as the agent, so it was decent.
Yep.
They ended up trying to renegotiate that one. So Open Door, a few properties we've crushed it with, like you were describing with hedge funds, and a couple of them, they've came back and tried to renegotiate us like 30, 50 grand. And there's like, with no good reason. They already had video, like it was good.
Yeah. I'll take the good with the bad though. I mean,
yeah. So we ended up, so when it fell out with Open Door, I said, all right, screw it. I'm not getting 350. I'm probably not even getting 335. Maybe I can get 315, 325 if I continue to do this. I said, let's remodel this thing. And so Vero in our office, she did a phenomenal job. I just posted on Instagram the other day. Just like a 1,300 square foot townhouse, cool lake community down here in Phoenix. And we sold the thing. I listed it at $450. I thought that was high. We sold it for $460, no contingencies. We close next week. I mean, the delta is insane.
Yes, right.
And that's kind of a couple different examples, right? Where I'm talking about, like, we made so much more money last year just on the ones that all we had to do was close on them, you know. And then now you look at this one, and it's like, how much more money is there too? But you've got a huge team. I mean, right? Like, we've got.
Not really. No, it's. Yeah, I've got me. I've got Jamie, who's like she does transactions, invoice, and then all like operations, because it's so much beyond. She's not just a transaction coordinator. She does everything. And then I've got Ryan, who does sales acquisitions. We brainstorm on a bunch of stuff too. But Ryan's been with me since I since the beginning. He knows construction, Ryan's everything. Awesome. So yeah, you met Ryan. So I've got them, and then we started bringing on more acquisitions people, but yeah, so we just brought on 2 more acquisitions guys, and then I have like a VA. My mom does my books, so I have a bookkeeper too. Nice. And then
that's a great person. I wish my mom.
Dude, she catches everything, and I can obviously can trust her, but my mom's amazing. But yeah, so it's not a huge team. There's like basically 7 then I had one project manager. I just brought on another one because. Well,
so that's where I was going to go. You're like, okay, so that's the hub, but like out there doing all these flips, how do you manage that? Because I can tell you, like, just one, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. So what does your operation look like for that? How do you manage that?
Yeah, because I probably have about 30 or anywhere from like 25 to 35 renos going on at any time. And I have one main GC, and then I have like 3 crews for like when I maybe, you know, if the GC's bid's too high, or I know it's like a really old house where the GC's going to be 80, my guys can get it done for, 55 sometimes, or whatever the case is. But so I have those 3 crews, and my project manager, we follow the process. We have templates for each different, price points of homes. You have a 200 to 400,000, a 400 to 600, and then like a 700 to $1 million plus. The $1 million ones don't really ever use the template. We pick those out, but and they just run the jobs, and we set the time frame. We order all the materials as quickly as possible. We just try to push through as quickly as we can. So I have one main GC does a lot of it.
So you have a GC that you can basically say, like, they can give you a price and a date, and kind of manage them, and you've been working with them, so they're good.
Yep.
And then you've got 3 crews that are essentially like in-house. Like you've got different people that like, so you can do 3 houses at a time.
No, they'll take on one of those crews. One of the guys can take on 2, one can take on 3, one of them can take on 1 house at a time. So
Okay,
that kind
but
of thing.
those guys work together.
No, they're 3 separate little crews, and then so one of the guys will kind of like hire out the granite guy. It's his buddy. He does the carpet. We do the same thing. He can do 2 at a time. We'll hire like broken windows.
Within
We give
the
them all the
crews,
material.
though, so within the crews, those guys kind of are always working together, but they're on different houses.
The three other ones that are not the GCs, they have little crew, and they're totally separate from each other. They don't. So they just kind of, my project manager will run them, say, hey, these are the materials we want to use. This is what we're going to paint everything. And they just run with it. I mean, it's just like Phoenix, where most of the houses are newer. So mostly, so they're not, it's not the Midwest or the East Coast where it's like $100,000 rehab and you're doing floor joists and rotted wood. It's like they're stucco tile homes or compost shingle. And it's like, we do flooring, carpet, baseboards, cabinets, countertops. It's like clockwork. It's pretty.
So with those guys, then do you guys like have to like worry about like making sure that those guys are there? They know what to do. If one of them quits, like refilling them, like do you guys operate in that part, or within each one of those crews, do they kind of handle that? And then you just 1099 each crew?
I pay my one guy of each of those crews and they take care of their guys that they try to hire out in between. And one of them, he's been with me for 5 years. If they're bad on one job, like negligent on a job, I'm not going to use them again. So I only work with the guys that I see care. They care a lot. They want to do a good job, and then they get a lot of business and they stay on top of it. Sometimes they do go, a month past or 2 months past due dates, but they're telling me why, even if it's not the best excuse. And I'm like, all right, well then this guy can't do 4 houses anymore. He can only do 2 at a time. And we just learn and adjust, adapt, whatever. And sometimes we'll crisscross them. If like one's overwhelmed, they'll bring in the other guy. They don't love it, but I'm like, it needs to get done. And they understand, and we're just team players, and I try to take care of them, and they're happy, and it's worked out so far.
So somebody, well, I think we kind of wrap it up on this. If somebody's out there, they want to get into fix and flips, they want to be the next Casey Ryan. Obviously, there's going to be some different parts. They're going to need to find deal flow. They're going to have to understand how to run numbers. And they're going to have to understand how to do the fix and flip, like all the components. What would you say is the way to go out and find those teams? Like, should they hook up with a GC? Should they try to find like one of those guys that kind of has their homies that kind of makes up that crew? What's the ticket?
That's it. Yeah. So I would ask the workers, hey, do you have a brother? Do you know anybody else that does it? And that's what they're always asking, trying to find more guys. That's the hardest part. But yeah, it's like just find the construction community, drive through neighborhoods, look for dumpsters, walk in. I mean, these flips, I've done it many times, and I've pulled up to my house and there's a stranger in it because they just walk in and are talking to the workers because it's a neighbor. They just walk up to the house, see who's working there, say, do you need other work? And they may say yes or no. Just keep doing that. You drive through or go look at houses that just closed with flippers. You can make a list of 15 properties and one day build the whole crew.
It's funny, man. I got in my phone, and I don't even really flip houses, right? But like mostly from rentals over the years, I've got like in my phone, like Jim Roofer, Jose Plumber, like, Alberto Carpet, like just all these first names. And then
their trade. Yeah. I made an Excel list so I don't ever forget, or like read them out when they're blacklisted and just roll with it. But you're going to go through some guys, but yeah, it's good to know what the costs are so that when you're wholesaling, you don't look like a fool when you're like, hey, this is going to be a 25,000 rehab, and you walk the house, you're like, this is 55 grand, like easily. And they just don't know. And wholesalers try. Also, I don't typically like working with wholesalers which this may just be a me thing, that try to sell me on the deal. It's like, dude, you're not going to change my mind. Like, I'm not going to believe your comps that you're telling me. I know your rehab is off. Like, don't try to sell me on it. So that was always the approach that I took the year one when we did 115 pretty much wholesale deals. And it's because the investors love working with me, because if they said no, I mean, always, you want to be selling, of course, but it wasn't in a way where I was trying to convince them that they were wrong or that their rehab was this or that, like
you want to understand why they're not just saying, yeah, because there's the other properties that like everyone wants.
Yep. And then that way you're not underpricing your deals, and if you send out deals that the numbers don't make sense, they're eventually going to be falling on deaf ears. I have wholesalers that send me deals. I don't even comp them because I'm like, this isn't going to be a deal. So you got to be sending out quality deals that make sense.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think I've got a huge buyers list, but I know, and I look like only a small percentage of the people are like routinely opening and looking at every single deal. So like that's the hotspot. And to your point, like if that's a smaller segment on a huge buyers list for somebody who's been doing it for a long time and predominantly wholesaling, I mean, imagine what happens when you start putting bad comps and bad crap in there. Like you lose all credibility versus, I mean, that small segment of people, they know, like the same way you said you did those 115 wholesale deals. They're like, oh, this is worth my time. And they continue to look at it and continue to look at it, look at the pictures, and boom, pick up the phone.
And if you work with them too, if you come to them and you're like, hey, like, I've got whatever, I know first off, you'll get the feel for their taste. But secondly, there's been times where I'm like, nobody wanted this deal. And I hit up one of the buyers. I'm like, hey, this deal works if you do it this way. What do you think? And they'll be like, yeah, I mean, I see that. And then I sell it. Whereas if you just send it to the list and follow up with a couple people, you may end up canceling that deal versus I call them and they pick up my call because they're like, this guy's not an idiot. And so they pick up my call and I'm like, what do you think? Am I off here? Like, what do you see? And then you sell the deal and it's done.
Yeah. They're like, oh, dang, this is something.
Yeah. I missed it or whatever, but they pick up your phone call because you're not, sending them junk all the time.
I love it. Well, I'd say key takeaways, take the business seriously, be in it for the long run, learn it before you earn. You can do a little both, but learning is super important. You got to have that asset. Flipping is awesome.
Never feel entitled either. Never feel entitled. I get people all the time that are like, they think that they should get more on certain deals and whatever. I'm like, dude, I did hundreds of deals where I made $800 on it for the first few years and I made people millions of dollars and I didn't care at all. I'm like, I don't care. I just have to do more,
Yeah. There's an infinite deals out there. That's for sure. But you got to get the knowledge first and then you can do whatever you want.
Yep, exactly.
I love it, dude. Where do people find you if they want to look you up on like Instagram or whatever?
My Instagram's kcp.ryan and my Facebook I think is the same.
kcp.ryan. That threw me off on the email because I was like kc.ryan. I looked at it too.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Good catching up. Yeah. I appreciate you taking the time to share with everybody.
Sure, of course, man. Anytime.
All right.
All right, later.